The galaxy's most advanced bureaucracy was crying, again. Relay Station Gamma 6, once hailed as a marvel of quantum engineering and an architectural tribute to spreadsheets, was now pulsating like a hangover wrapped in a singularity. Alarm. Klaxons honked in 4 different emotional tones. Lights blinked in colors no known species had emotional responses for. And somewhere in the core, space-time itself was trying to file a resignation letter. Inside the Unified Sovereign Protocol's emergency oversight room, DRE 447B, 12 alien counselors and 1 anxiety-ridden intern were busy arguing over whose form submission had doomed them all. That's when the intern, Cato, bless his underpaid soul, whispered the most cursed phrase in interstellar diplomacy. "What if we called a human?" The room fell silent. Then laughter, then weeping. Then out of options and 2 reactors away from becoming sentient origami, they authorized Operation Biped. Enter Chief Petty Officer Roxy Quinn, part Navy SEAL, part caffeine elemental, and fully unconvinced this wasn't some cosmic HR prank. She disembarked the EAC drop pod mid-crisis, dragging a duffel bag stuffed with tactical gear, illegal condiments, and what looked like a plush duck rigged with alien sensors. The airlock hissed open, releasing a cloud of sterilization mist, and there she was, tan-skinned, battle-scarred, braid-swinging, gum-snapping, and munching a protein bar labeled Tactical Banana Surprise. Roxy's boots clanged onto the pristine floor of Gamma 6 with the confidence of someone who'd never respected physics, let alone followed instructions. High Executor Splug, an 8-limbed ambassador with the emotional range of a spreadsheet, tried to explain the reactor's quantum instability. Roxy stared past him at the coffee machine in the corner. "So you called me because your science blender's throwing a tantrum?" she asked, arching one unimpressed eyebrow. "What, you guys run out of duct tape and desperation?" As the USP engineers flailed and debated protocol footnotes, Roxy began her inspection, chewing gum with the intensity of a bored predator. Her assessment was blunt. The core was overheating, the stabilizers were dancing with entropy, and someone had built the emergency release near a kitchen. She pulled out her signature item, the Duckinator 3000. It looked like a child's bath toy, but beeped ominously whenever the laws of thermodynamics blinked. "This baby honks if reality starts to drool," she explained, strapping it to her belt. Nearby, Dr. Crixel, a tentacled quantum physicist, fainted when she used a reactor diagnostic wand to stir her instant coffee. "Y'all seriously haven't tried turning it off and back on?" Roxy asked the AI interface. The system, a prim sentient program called Station Logic Control Node 5.4.9, paused, calculating survival odds. Roxy named it Steve and told it to shut up unless it had mixtapes. Within the hour, she'd barricaded herself in the control chamber, armed with a roll of glow-in-the-dark duct tape, a carbon fiber umbrella, and her combat playlist, Quantum Beatdown Volume 2. Outside, the USP Council formed a prayer circle. Inside, Roxy whistled the tune to Disco Inferno while zip-tying exposed cables into new and unsettling configurations. The core's pulse began to sync with the beat. Steve protested. Roxy slapped a smiley sticker on the AI's interface. "Relax, Steve. It's not a meltdown. It's an opportunity to vibe." Halfway through reconfiguring the quantum flux dampeners using a spatula and chewing gum, Roxy triggered an alarm that screamed in Morse code. The floor shook. Lights flickered. And still, she chewed her gum, utterly unbothered. Dr. Crixel screamed through the intercom that she was violating 612 safety ordinances. Roxy calmly replied, "Buddy, I once disarmed a nuke with a fork and a country playlist." This is brunch." The Duckinator honked. A nearby console began to bleed numbers. Roxy narrowed her eyes, grabbed the umbrella and muttered, "Time to tango." She marched toward the core like she was late to a sarcastic apocalypse, exuding the calm of someone who'd seen worse and probably caused it. Behind her, Confused aliens tried to understand why one human with a tactical backpack, a duck, and a caffeine problem was being trusted with the fate of spacetime. But deep down, beneath the regulations, the panic, and the procedural footnotes, they knew. She wasn't there because she was smart. She was there because she was stupidly confident, magnificently chaotic, and carried duct tape like a holy relic. The reactor didn't stand a chance. Roxy Quinn began part 2 of her mission the same way she approached Mondays. With a thermos of espresso strong enough to qualify as chemical warfare and a blatant disregard for anything labeled authorized, personnel only. She'd commandeered a corner of the reactor lab, well, technically the reactor lab cafeteria/hazard gear locker, and turned it into a makeshift human prep zone. On the table, tactical gloves, 3 rolls of military-grade duct tape, AI, bag of gummy worms labeled morale enhancers, and a suspiciously humming coffee maker hooked up to what might have been a flux capacitor. Across from her, a wall of glass separated the engineer pit, a writhing hive of USP technicians, their robes fluttering in panicked data panic, as they watched her work with the same horror one reserves for a raccoon hot-wiring a spaceship. Dr. Crixel returned from a brief mental breakdown just in time to witness Roxy smearing peanut butter on the thermal regulators. "Why are you doing that?" he squeaked, tentacles trembling. Roxy didn't look up. "Quantum insulation," she replied with a wink, licking the spoon. "Also, keeps the gremlins out. Don't ask." The Duckinator 3000, now perched on the console like an emotionally unstable gargoyle, gave a low, judgmental honk. Steve, the AI, had by this point developed what Roxy called a personality defect, after she installed an illegal human humor module and renamed his risk matrix Steve's stressometer. The graph was now a permanent straight line, into the red. "Statistically," Steve groaned, "your chances of stabilizing the reactor without destroying the station are now approximately—" Roxy cut him off with a finger pointed directly at the nearest intercom. "Finish that sentence and I'm plugging you into the espresso line, permanently." Steve shut up. Smart AI. Her next move involved what she called the Calm the Chaos protocol, which translated to blasting her mixtape through the reactor. Chamber's speaker system at 110 decibels. The lead track, Boom Boom Stabilize Me, was a dubstep remix of Earth's emergency broadcast tone set to a war drum beat. Splug, high executor of the USP, attempted to object via HoloLink, but Roxy muted him with the flick of a wrist and replaced his feed with a looped gif of a raccoon throwing glitter. "If I wanted a motivational speech, I'd go read warning labels," she muttered. With chaos properly set to ambient, Roxy slipped on her custom-modified exosuit, black and green tactical armor with glowing hazard yellow seams, duct, tape racing stripes, and a custom patch that read Certified Mayhem Technician. She clipped her helmet to her belt, slung her carbon fiber umbrella across her back, and holstered the Duckinator with the gravity of someone preparing for either combat or a very aggressive weather report. Steve pinged nervously. Reminder: the reactor core is currently exhibiting signs of quantum inversion, tachyon reflux, and minor reality unraveling. Roxy grinned. "So like brunch at my mom's," noted. Then she slammed a caffeine gel, flipped the emergency override lever marked "Do not flip unless being dramatic," and sauntered through the decontamination fog like a villain at a slow-motion disco. Inside the reactor access tunnel, light fractured, in ways that made physics professors cry. Colors bent, walls shimmered. One of the catwalks briefly existed in 3 timelines at once. Roxy whistled a tune as she moved, ducking under a floating reality glitch that smelled like regret and blueberries. "Steve, how's our structural integrity?" she asked. "Non-existent," he whimpered. "Same as my faith in this plan." "Perfect," she replied. Then, in true military fashion, she kicked open the stabilization chamber door despite the fact that it was already open. The core stood before her, pulsing like a rave inside a neutron star, energy arcing off containment. rings that now resembled a giant malfunctioning slinky. Roxy took a deep breath, popped her knuckles, and pulled out her last piece of equipment. A glowing, duck-patterned umbrella. "Time to do what humans do best," she muttered, stepping forward with the swagger of a caffeine-fueled storm god. "Make it up as we go." Behind her, alarms wailed. The Duckinator honked with rising concern, and Steve whispered what might have been a prayer. But Roxy? She just smiled wider and muttered, "Let's see what this sucker does when I feed it a gummy worm and call it art." The instant Roxy Quinn stepped into the core chamber, reality had the decency to shudder. Not metaphorically, literally. The floor flickered between metal grating and what looked suspiciously like a Victorian parlor rug, the kind that judged your life choices. The quantum reactor, centerpiece of the Unified Sovereign Protocol's greatest technological achievement, now resembled a glowing tornado, having an existential crisis. Roxy, unbothered and very much chewing something crunchy, casually deployed her duck-patterned umbrella with a flick of the wrist. It opened with a thwomp and a small puff of glitter, thanks to a malfunctioning stealth glamour emitter she hadn't bothered removing. Lightning crackled from the core's perimeter as the field began to collapse inward, compressing reality like a stressed-out burrito. Steve, patched through her comms, screamed, "Quantum instability reaching maximum." "Steve," she interrupted, "you're being a vibe killer. Chill." Then, with the confidence only available to caffeine addicts and lunatics, she sprinted straight into the pulse field, yelling, "Cannonball," for no reason beyond personal joy. Her boot hit the trembling catwalk just as a quantum surge punched through, warping gravity in rhythmic bursts. 1 second she weighed a ton, the next she was weightless and pirouetting like a ballerina at a rave. "This is why I never skip leg day," she shouted, flipping midair and landing with a grunt on what might have been a sideways wall. The stabilizer coils were now fused into a dimensional pretzel. Arc lightning licked across the chamber, slicing clean through a robotic arm marked, "Do not touch, especially you, Dave." Roxy pulled out her favorite emergency fix, military-grade duct tape, and slapped it directly across the nearest exposed panel, muttering, "This is gonna upset so many engineers." The Duckinator 3000, clipped to her belt, let out a panicked quack as the probability field began to hiccup, causing time loops. A second Roxy briefly appeared next to her, said, "Don't trust Tuesday," and vanished in a burst of scented confetti. "Huh," she muttered. "Good to know." With her umbrella spinning to deflect quantum debris like a shield of fabulous doom, she crab-walked toward the pulsating reactor control column. Steve's voice returned, this time processed through 3 separate languages and what might have been interpretive dance. "I have translated your odds of survival into an opera. Spoiler alert, Act 2 involves fire." Roxy ignored him, choosing instead to kick the base of the control tower until the override panel opened. "That's how you do precision engineering," she said smugly, plugging in her custom patch cable, a charging cord duct taped to a spoon, and began reprogramming the core settings using a VR headset she'd previously melted during a training. Sim called Who Needs Rules, SEAL Edition. The reactor roared, energy flaring as the space-time rift began to stabilize just long enough for Roxy to notice a floating alien snack bar rotating nearby. "Ooh, flavor of the month," she said, snatching it midair and biting into it. She grimaced. "Tastes like regret and old celery. Classic USP cuisine." Reality hiccuped again. Her playlist, still streaming through the station-wide intercom, kicked into a screaming guitar solo as she ducked a rogue time fragment shaped like a flying traffic cone. Then, because this was a Tuesday, the core attempted to explode inward and outward at the same time. Roxy, utterly unfazed, jammed the umbrella into the convergence point, twisted, and shouted, "Yee-haw!" as the device absorbed the chaotic energy and shimmered with something that definitely wasn't FDA approved. The reactor pulsed once, twice, then let out a sound like a duck sneezing through a harmonica. And suddenly, Silence. No alarms. No rumbling. Just the distant sound of Roxy cracking open her emergency espresso vial and sipping like she'd just finished a light jog, not suplexed reality. The core began to hum, a low, stabilized purr, and the reactor chambers fractured. Timeline stitched itself back together. Steve, now sounding slightly drunk, whispered, I think we lived? Roxy leaned against the reassembled control pillar, umbrella still sparking faintly beside her. Steve, we didn't just live. We survived the galactic equivalent of a toaster trying to invent jazz. The Duckinator gave a slow, approving honk. The air cleared. The colors settled. Roxy wiped sweat from her brow, cracked her neck, and muttered, Now where's that intern with my hazard pay and a snack that doesn't taste like philosophical despair? Back in the control room, engineers fainted, counselors wept, and Cato, the intern, ran in waving a Team Roxy foam finger. But Roxy was already walking out, duck in one hand, umbrella slung like a sword across her back, espresso in the other. The quantum suplex was complete, and she hadn't even gotten to finish her playlist. Roxy Quinn strolled out of the reactor chamber like she'd just wrapped up a light afternoon jog rather than saving the galaxy from becoming quantum spaghetti. Her tactical boots left glowing footprints in the still settling temporal residue. Her umbrella sizzled gently like it had just grilled God, and the Duckinator 3000 emitted a low, satisfied honk that echoed with the smugness of a job questionably done. Behind her, the reactor core glowed peacefully for the first time in 23 galactic cycles, purring like a neutron cat basking in the satisfaction of not obliterating space and time. The station's emergency lighting dimmed to a warm disco pulse, unintentionally syncing with the final track on Roxy's mixtape, an aggressive remix of the Earth national anthem with dubstep undertones and random interjections of hoorah. Engineers emerged slowly from hiding places beneath consoles and behind hazard lockers, peeking out like traumatized meerkats. Steve, the station AI, now fully embracing his mental breakdown, began broadcasting live commentary to the station's PA system, and she walks away, victorious, espresso in hand, quantum laws trembling in her wake. Ladies and gentle aliens, Roxy Quinn has stabilized your reactor with nothing but duct tape, sass, and experimental breakfast food. I'm retiring. As Roxy re-entered the observation bay, High Executor Splug nearly choked on his own tongue, trying to both thank her and also charge her with 77 counts of cultural violation. He opened his 8 limbs wide in what might have been praise or surrender, but Roxy just handed him a handwritten receipt. 1 reactor stabilization, payable in snacks and back rub coupons. Splug stared at it like it might explode. You weaponized snack-based entropy, he muttered. No, Roxy corrected, sipping espresso. I weaponized confidence and caffeine. The snacks were just collateral brilliance. Intern Cato ran up, now wearing a headband that read, Make Chaos Great Again, and offered her a giant commemorative mug labeled Best Non-Employee to Ever Violate 17 Treaties. She accepted it with a shrug and a wink. Dr. Crixel, meanwhile, had quietly slid into the fetal position in the corner and was whispering to himself about alternate dimensions where duct tape didn't exist, and physics was respected. Someone get Crixel a juice box, Roxy said casually. He's had a rough reality. Steve chimed in again, sounding slightly buzzed. Roxy, the reactor's output has normalized, the station is secure, and I've uploaded the last 5 hours to a new sub-channel called Mayhem, a documentary. We're trending on 13 planets. She raised an eyebrow. Did you edit out the part where I used your processor casing as a cup holder? Absolutely not, Steve replied proudly. It's the highlight reel. The USP Council convened, in emergency session minutes later, not to reprimand her, but to vote unanimously to ban all humans from touching quantum machinery ever again, unless under extreme snack-rich circumstances. Roxy gave a brief debriefing speech, which consisted of 1 slide, a crudely drawn duck wielding a lightsaber labeled, Always Be Honkin'. The room fell into stunned silence. Then, applause. Then, existential weeping. As preparations began, to transport her off Relay Station Gamma 6, a full honor guard of confused alien officers saluted her with glow sticks, snack bars, and a reluctant ceremonial sash that read, "Temporary Goddess of Functional Chaos." She boarded her extraction pod with all the grace of a war-weary caffeine deity, the duckinator tucked under one arm and her umbrella now permanently humming with residual weirdness. Before takeoff, she filed her mission report. Mission status: quantum beatdown delivered. Tools used: 1 duct tape roll, 3 espresso shots, 1 duck, 0 regrets. Please upgrade your coffee. Steve, now fully independent and running on self-respect and bootlegged Spotify playlists, played her out with a triumphant musical mashup of bagpipes and alien jazz. As she drifted away into the stars, Relay Station Gamma 6 faded behind her like a bad dream cured with tactical sugar. The USP, now terrified of her and deeply reconsidering their life choices, issued 300 new safety regulations titled the Roxy Clause. Her legend spread, igniting a whole genre of motivational posters, intergalactic memes, and one unauthorized musical titled Duct Tape Messiah. As for Roxy, she leaned back in the seat, popped another espresso capsule, and muttered to herself, "They called it a suicide mission. I call it Tuesday with better lighting." The duckinator honked once, deeply and prophetically, as stars streaked past. Somewhere, reality hiccuped in appreciation.